Ferry's far-standing medium and far-standing heavy attacks can now be blocked in midair. These are some pretty big nerfs to Ferry overall. The reason I say that is because now Ferry's not able to box out the opponent for trying to jump in and take control of space against her as much. Before, if the opponent jumped at her and she was spaced far enough away, she'd be able to smack them and put them back into full screen, effectively removing the ground they've gained. This means that aside from catching the opponent in their jump startup frames, there's not really any sort of damage that she can reliably get from an opponent that's trying to approach her from the air. It's a little weird to see these nerfs given to Ferry, but overall, we're going to see how it plans out, as she does have some other changes in an attempt to compensate for it. Her Dash M, for starters, has its travel speed and distance increased. This is how it behaved before, and here's how it looks now. A pretty significant increase, so it's more likely that she's going to be willing to throw this out in neutral. Do note, though, that your reward on hit is still pretty low. So while it is better as an approaching tool, I don't really see the incentive behind using it. Her Dash Heavy also has seen a little bit of a rebalancing. The recovery has been increased by 5 frames, so on block, it's now no longer -3 and safe, but -8 and punishable. In return for this, on hit, it now causes a ground bounce on standard hit, and the knockback has been adjusted so that follow-ups can be done even on a grounded hit. A 2L low is what I'm able to get so far. Compare that to the situation before. This was relatively safe to throw out. It did swap sides, which means you had a way to escape the corner, as well as be pretty much safe on a block. So that's some utility that she no longer has, because now she's going to be -8 and punishable if she goes for this option. On hit, instead of getting a combo, you just got a knockdown effectively. So it's more rewarding when you successfully hit someone with it, but it's far riskier for her to throw out as well now. I'm not so sure if Ferry players will be inclined to use this move as much anymore. The light version of her neutral special, Guest Bent, has had its pull range slightly shortened. In return, though, the pull strength has been increased, and so when you use Guest Bent into heal, you're able to swap sides with the foe. Here's how it behaved before. Here's how it looks now. A small step back and you don't get the pull animation anymore. And here's how heal looks. I can't help but feel like this is a compensation buff for after how they made Dash Heavy to be unsafe on block anymore. So this seems like they want to have this be Ferry's way of getting out of the corner. The startup on the medium version of Adjustment has been reduced from 32 frames to 29. You can also hold down the button to charge it up to a maximum startup of 44 frames. You don't get an increase in damage or a change in the knockdown situation from this. A change specifically mentioned in the patch notes is that this changes the jet spin actually allow you to combo it from a 2H. This would improve her anti-air damage overall. Compare this to before. However, even this buff is almost a moot point as well, because don't forget, the opponent can also air block her 2H. So if an opponent is not taking a risk by swinging a button at you, or just forgets to hold back for some reason, Ferry's not really going to be able to enjoy this buff all that often. The heavy version of Guest Bend into heal has its launch height increased, which makes follow-up easier. This is supposed to mean that Ferry can now get attacks from either close or long range. You can link close medium / there, as well as from at full range. The pull strength on block for the ultimate Guest Bent version has been increased. You're now within close medium / range here for the opponent. Compare this to before. You're only within far / range now. The light and medium version of Beppo Sikkim have had their knockback when blocked in mid-air adjusted so that the opponent is now pushed back farther. Before, the opponent could get pretty close. Compare that to now. This is a nice little change for Ferry, where she's able to at least rely on Beppo Sikkim to keep the opponent at bay from their aerial approaches. The medium version of Trauma has had its startup reduced. It now starts up in 21 frames instead of 24. Overall, this means it could possibly make for some tighter frame traps or allow her to link new combos that weren't able to work before. The ultimate version of Trauma has had its pull range expanded. It's by a marginal bit, but still, it is a buff, I suppose. The travel arc of the medium version of GG Get 'em has had its travel arc expanded against ranged foes. Before at full screen, GG would fall just short of the enemy. Here's how it looks now. GG lands squarely on the enemy, actually. This is a little nice for Ferry to have consistent pressure against full screen opponents. Additionally, the ultimate version of GG Get 'em has had its launch height increase and knockback reduced, making follow-ups easier. I can link a close heavy slash here, compared to before. I'm still able to do so, but the Grand Dummy is significantly farther away. This might open up a couple of different combo routes just based on the different positioning, especially with all of the volatile parts of Ferry's kit to consider. Ferry's 5U, Einball, did receive a buff. The hit stop was increased by 5 frames after the final hit is blocked. Before, this would be the situation. Ferry will be -2 at this space. Safe, but it's not her turn anymore. With the change to hit stop, she's now +3. So she's able to use this to reset her pressure and continue to bully the opponent. I think she'll appreciate this. Ferry's regular Skybound art super, Vergiften, now does 8 hits instead of 5, though the damage has been adjusted so that it does not have an increase in damage overall. This has a lot of implications for her, namely the fact that she's going to be able to get longer combos with it anyway, especially off of her jumping overhead fuzzy setups that she can do. Since I don't play Ferry myself, I'm not going to really be able to show you the implications of this change, so we go to Twitter. Shoutouts to Mizisco for posting this combo for Ferry. In that one clip alone, we're actually able to see how various buffs were able to interact together to give Ferry that new combo of hers, which definitely does more damage than the previous patch. The dash medium links, for example, the dash heavy being used as a combo finisher to then set up into a meaty GG, the EX just spent heal able to then link into a Beppo Sikkim to launch them back into the orb. It's some pretty cool stuff, so it's not like Ferry's been completely gutted in this version, she just has new tools to play with. The last change to go over is to her install super. It no longer reduces damage on her normal throws, brave counters, raging strikes, raging chains, anything like that. She just does normal damage now. This is nice for Ferry because now she's more inclined to use this super aggressively, though with the buffs to her other Skybound art, I find it really hard to invest in going into this version of the super when you're effectively going to have a juiced up Ed Ball to play with, especially for combo games and mix-up potential. On the official paths notes, there was a pretty memey section to refer to regarding skill gap between players when Ferry was involved. That's been since removed out, but with it, we're left with a couple of questionable changes that I'm still trying to wrap my head around for Ferry. She's hurt by the nerfs to rising overheads, which limits the damage she's able to get from her fuzzies. She has more of her normals being air blockable now, which means that while she wants to force the opponent to try to jump to get at her, she has less and less ways of actually punishing them for doing so. Sure, she's able to theoretically get more rewards from something like a 2H now, but because the opponent can block it, it kind of feels like a hollow buff. That's almost the thing that feels like. For every compensation buff that Ferry gets, it almost feels hard to justify for how, in turn, those don't really make up for the nerfs that she received in this patch. We'll have to see how she fares going forward, but I don't really see her having a spike in tournament play